All right. Hey, how you doing there? This is Danny Ray Crum Jr. with Psych Monkey behind me. This is our next interview regarding the anxiety and stress during this pandemic. This next guest is going to speak on some really actually some very practical concerns for small businesses. Stay tuned. When he knocks on the door, I'll let him in and we'll meet him. All right. Our guest of honor is knocking at the door. Let's let him in. I'll introduce you. There you go. We'll give him a chance to turn the call on. Hey, how you doing, bud?
Is it working?
It's working fine, pal. You leave it just like that, and you're oriented correctly, and we can hear you. So
Oh, great. This is my first Zoom experience, by the way.
All good, brother.
Excited. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So I've already done the shtick where I introduced the channel and all that stuff. Per the script, why don't you introduce yourself? Give people as much of your name as you want, your professional background, what you do for a living, that kind of thing.
Well, I guess to start with, I think on the intro you put IRS agent. I'm really not an IRS agent.
I realize I wrote that incorrectly. So
well,
correct.
I'm an enrolled agent on the Internal Revenue Service.
What's the difference?
Well, I'm licensed by the Treasury Department to prepare all tax to represent taxpayers before the IRS. And around about how people understand, it's really like I'm a CPA, but I'm licensed by the Treasury Department, and we only deal with federal taxation.
Interesting. So you're
I'm tested and licensed, and all my continuing education has to be federal tax related.
So you are an enrolled agent with the IRS?
Correct, but I don't work for the IRS. It's just we're licensed by the Treasury Department. There might be, I want to say I'm ballparking here, but I think about 80,000 of us across the United States. So we don't have a really big marketing arm to get our names out there.
Okay.
But anyways, that's what we do. We're kind of like federal tax experts.
I'll make sure that I correct it when we do post this. I'll figure out how to say it. I might just say tax expert, licensed to the Treasury Department. I'll figure it out. Okay, so in any case, your name is Brett. I don't know if I'm gonna give it. There you go. And you are an enrolled agent specializing in federal taxes. Okay, interesting. And did you say you represent people?
Well, if someone's like for audit and that sort of thing, we can represent people.
Okay.
We're licensed to prepare. The thing that makes us different than, CPAs is the CPA can do many different things. They can audit, they can do financial planning.
Okay.
We don't really do any of that. We mainly just focus in federal tax area.
This is going to be interesting because I've been interviewing mostly mental health professionals across different disciplines, as you know. Again, putting out those affiliations and biases out there. I interviewed Brett's wife, who happens to be a social worker with the same district I serve, and formerly was a magistrate. So there's that affiliation out there. We're putting that up front. But what's going to be interesting is, so all the people I'm interviewing here, Brett, they're talking about the anxieties and the stressors during this pandemic. And when you and I talked just priorly before, you made some interesting comments. Like you know the inside track. So you're going to be able to tell the viewers who may have a small business or know someone who has a small business, some of the concerns and worries that people are going through right now that you have for them, right? Why don't you speak on that?
Yeah, I'm more than you want my background. Just a little bit more about my background. I mean, to get an education. I'm basically have an accounting degree and economics degree, and my MBA's through West Virginia University. I've been a small business owner. Oh my God. Well, since I was in college, so my whole life, pretty much, my whole professional life.
So you yourself are still currently so you're still a small business owner yourself too.
Correct. I always have been, really.
Well, my point being is, what you're about to say from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint.
Correct.
Okay.
And also from working with small business owners that are clients. And also I do a lot of teaching myself through overnightaccountant.com. It's a side business we have. We hope to be the main business at some point, but right now it's a side business.
Okay.
We do training videos on, business development and also different aspects of taxation.
Nice.
So I'd also been on the board of oh, which one? I was teacher at Mountain State University. I taught economics
Okay.
for a while, and then also American Devils on a couple of their different boards. One of them was I was on board of directors. We had a small business incubator for a period of time. They attempted that, but of course they're an online university, so it makes it kind of hard to funnel. To funnel your students aren't there to funnel into the thing. So I taught there a good bit.
May I
also.
show my ignorance and ask you what that means, a small business incubator? What's that mean?
Well, basically, you provide a small business the resources to get started. You do it in training, seed capital, the things they need to get moving.
Okay.
And a lot of times you provide them a place to work. At lower rates, it's kind of an incubator. It's kind of like where you sprout the seeds or the egg, I guess, and let it go. So been involved with that, small businesses, and that's a little bit of different things.
So what kind of stressors and anxieties are you personally and professionally becoming aware of as it applies during this pandemic for those families who are entrepreneurial, if you will?
It's if you're dealing with folks that deal with psychology and other social workers and that sort of thing, what they need to understand when dealing with business owners or any kind of entrepreneur, whether it's the entrepreneur spirit that someone has or also their small business, is right now they've never experienced any really greater uncertainty, probably in their whole careers. Right now, it's really scary right now. It's scary for them. It's scary for me as, in helping them out, because a lot of folks don't even know they have all this assistance. And that's one of the things I've been working on so much right now is they have the CARES Act, the Family First Act, and you may have heard of these loans that are going out, the payroll protection loans, which are highly complex. No one really understands them. They're just trying to push the money out as quick as they can before what we call the regs are written on it. So the things we go by, we don't know. They're supposed to be forgiven at some point.
Right.
However, we don't know how that's going to be calculated. So you got all these different uncertainties going into small business owners, their lives, that they just don't know if they're going to last.
Yeah, well, I mean, now, a lot of us,
their whole livelihood tied up in it.
A lot of us mental health professionals do tend to do some side work, private practice, what have you. But actually, I have a fair number of families that, whether it's their full-time job or a sidebar, they try the small business thing too. And I'll be honest, I see more struggle than not. I'm not a businessman, so
that's absolutely true. Most small business owners do live, like most folks live paycheck to paycheck. Right. The majority of small business owners live week to week, and that's just how it is. You get the entrepreneur spirit, you get bitten by the bug, so to speak, and it's hard to go back to work for somebody else, and you'll sacrifice a good bit to stay in that for lack of a better word, that profession. Right. And then some folks really do well economically, but on average, we're getting kind of off. Sometimes you have to redirect me because I go off on a little tangent, so redirect me back to center.
No, this is exactly it. I think you're going to bring a different perspective. I see, so Betty Jo, your wife, is a social worker. She and I can talk psychobabble mumbo jumbo all day long. But what I thought would be interesting about interviewing you is that you're going to be more business oriented in your speak. And who knows what family it speaks to or what person it speaks to. You're going to have a very practical insight. And at the end of this video, I'm going to ask, is there any way people can contact or reach out to you? So please do all the business speak you want. Two questions bounce around in my head, though, if I can focus a little bit. You'd mentioned CARES Act and things like that. We're all bombarded with this media, so I don't know what the truth is and what the truth is not. The media tells me that these funds dry up quicker than you can blink an eye. The media sponsors people saying, well, I applied and I got turned down. Can you speak to the realities of the stressors of that so our families maybe handle it better, maybe do better? You mentioned the application process.
Yeah, that's why I was actually a little late, because I was actually conferring with someone at a bank that had a question on how to do this for partnerships. And that's kind of where we're at. The money just came out. This is, if you want to get into the accountant's lifestyle, I guess, for the past few weeks, well, 6 weeks, I guess, it's just been trying to understand things that are already in motion and try to give advice on things when you don't have a direct, and that's really what we're dealing with now. It's just the money is going out as quick as it comes in. The application process, you're dealing with the Small Business Administration, which really it's just not geared to deal with this volume of paperwork. It's not geared to deal with these, the amount of money that they're dealing with. I think it's something like more than they've done in the past 14 years is being pushed out in a matter of weeks. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, a lot of the larger businesses, because a small business definition is up to 500 employees.
Okay.
A lot of folks don't realize that, in our county and many counties across, if you have a business with 500 employees, you probably have the biggest business in town in a lot of places. Most small business owners have 10 or fewer employees, and the stressor for these guys or these individuals is they don't have the resources. A lot of them, the lawyers or the accounting professionals, to get them in the front of the line for this money. Larger business to do the investigative work, to get out there, they already have the relationships with banks. Smaller business owners don't have all that, and they're trying to go through the local banks, and the local banks, God bless them, they're hamstrung as everybody else in dealing with this, and they're just doing what they can.
What are these professionals that can help get you to the front of the line faster? What are they doing that's so different, so special? Is it just that they have the relationships already, or is it specific things they know to do that maybe the typical small business owner doesn't know?
Well, we'll have to see how that pans out, but a lot of it is relationship. But the way the code was actually written, or the law was written, it was supposed to be really more first come, first serve. You've already seen a few class action lawsuits against some of the bigger banks with regard to this, with regard to the circumstances surrounding the way these loans were distributed. But mainly it's, it's kind of human nature. You let your best clients up front. It's just kind of, unfortunately, that's just the reality you're dealing with. And also, if you're a smaller business owner, you don't even know where to go.
You mentioned
the SBA website didn't have much information at all for a long time.
You mentioned the CARES Act. What else out there? What else is out there to maybe help these small business families that might help relieve some of their stress? What other programs? Because I haven't kept up with all of them.
Well, the only ones I really know are the ones affecting businesses, but you also have the stimulus checks you've heard so much about. That was part of the CARES Act. $2,400 for a family, making under $150,000 a year, single $75,000, $1,200, so they would get $1,200 checks plus $500 for each dependent, which is fairly narrowly defined. But so that's out there for everybody making under. Now, the process of getting there has been crazy because, Congress doesn't necessarily know the resources that the IRS has, and the IRS, like many bureaucracies, has rather antiquated equipment, and it's geared to do one thing, and that is to collect taxes and enforce the tax law, not to become, an organization that's dispersing massive amount of funds in a short time. And, the good thing is we're all in this boat together. In the sense that the IRS, most of those employees are working from home if they can. They're very short-staffed right now, and they're dealing with,
so what I hear you saying is that the
with a lot of stress.
The IRS was not created to be a
I'm sorry,
philanthropic.
I lost you. Can you see me?
Yep, I got you, bud. You're good, man. So what you're saying is the IRS was, and I'm asking, the IRS was not created to be a philanthropic type of institution to dispense. So they're actually having to change gears in their methodologies and function, or add an additional methodology and function, because now they're still the tax collector, but now they're also being tasked to be a little more philanthropic. Would I have that correct?
Well, they're becoming a disbursement agency with the systems that they have. And if you look at, I actually wrote an article about this on the overnight accountant thing, is like, we still don't know when a lot of these checks are even going to go out, particularly like for Social Security recipients and also, VA recipients. That's kind of just all in motion right now. And the IRS, I think a lot of it was the way the code was written. Again, when they passed the CARES Act, there must not have been a lot of consultation done with the actual system managers of the IRS. Like, can we or can't we do this?
Okay.
So the money's being dispersed. I did a great job under the circumstances. Personally, I'm not going to bash them about anything, but it's just stressful for everybody. And it's now a lot of folks who didn't have their banking information. They may be waiting till September to receive a check. But they're going out. They're distributing these, just so people know, they're distributing these checks in order of adjusted gross income. So the poor folks and folks with less income are going to get their checks mailed first.
What's the program that's helping small businesses continue to pay their employees? Is that part of the CARES Act, or is that?
Exactly. That's the payroll protection program, or PPP or PPL, which is the loan.
Okay.
They've been around for, believe it or not, I think it's only been about 3 weeks. So is it conceivable that a small business who's been approved still may not have the money in hand yet? Yes. Yeah. A lot of small business, particularly the second round, they just had the second round started. When is our process of this? It was either Friday or Monday of this week. I think it was Friday, but then again, we get all these dates mixed up because something else started Friday. Oh, the unemployment started at 10 p.m. Friday for the self-employed also, which is also part of the payroll. I mean, the CARES Act.
Right.
So if you know of any individuals that are self-employed, traditionally they don't qualify for unemployment. However, the federal, you had the CARES Act provided that. However, once again, you've got all your state unemployment offices are overwhelmed dealing with just regular unemployment. I mean, West Virginia is one of the states where 15% of the non-governmental employees or the private workforce has filed for unemployment so far, and that does not include the self-employed individuals. That was as of last week. So, we might be pushing 20% unemployment soon, and the highest unemployment we've ever had, just to put this in perspective, was 1933 during the Depression.
Right.
And that was 24-some odd percent. We're going to be very close to that by the time this is all over.
So what I hear you saying is really some of the same things that the mental health people and I have been talking about, but you're saying it on a larger scale. To my ears, I'm hearing you say that the country, the government, is having to redefine what it is, who it is, what each institution is, what their function is. There's a lot of redefining and repurposing, which we're finding that families and individuals are having to do for themselves. So families who are small business owners are going to need to be a little more patient, a little realistic, however stressful it might be, because not only are they redefining themselves, but the agencies that can serve them are redefining themselves. Would that be accurate?
It is accurate, but if like I mentioned earlier, if most Americans live paycheck to paycheck,
right?
And right now, it's not having a paycheck. So
what advice are you giving clients? Let's say I'm a small business. You pick the scenario. I may or may not have been approved yet, but I don't know how I'm going to make it past this week. What advice are you giving to deal with that?
There's several intrinsic problems with this, and it's being get into that later. But the way and I don't know if you want to even go there, but the way the loans were structured, they're not, for small business owners, they're kind of helpful, but they're kind of not helpful. And I could get into that, but my advice really is the first thing you need to do is contact, if you have any debt payments going on, rent, mortgage, car loans, equipment loans. First thing you need to do is contact all your lenders and see what you can work out. A lot of them are giving forbearance. Some of them are and forbearance just basically means, okay, we're not going to take those payments. You don't have to make it up later. Or they're deferring, the re-amortizing things. That at least frees up some cash flow. And then you got to trim as much as you can.
Do those debts have to be directly related to my business? Or let's say I'm a small businessman that works out of his home. Can I bring my personal mortgage into it? Let's say I don't have a separate.
Well, you don't ask, you don't get. That would be my first advice is to do that, and a lot of landlords are allowing that right now because I'm a landlord myself and I have a commercial client,
okay.
And I just didn't collect rent for a month, and I might have to do it again. I kind of hope not, but I might have to do it again, and I'm eating the mortgage.
Right.
But it's good to help the tenant out, but also if you lose the tenant, you might not get another one back the way things are going to be.
So your advice, your suggestion is play the long game. If you can bite that bullet, it certainly goes a long way with that recipient. Me as a small business person that's renting from you.
Well, yeah, but as the business owner, you just have to ask. I mean, if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Right.
And you got to really look at your basic needs. And first, for a small business owner, you got to start with your family. I mean, your family is really an expense of the business for a lot of folks, unless you have someone else that works in the household. If you're the breadwinner in the family, okay. When I'm working with small businesses, the first bills you have to pay, you're not really making a profit until you can pay all your own personal bills. So that's right. The first expense of the business is your personal bills. So you really need to start there and just make sure you get food on the table. But being self-employed, you don't have all the, by definition, you're a risk taker, and you don't have all of the, what's the word for it? The umbrella or
the safety net.
Thank you. The safety net. You don't have the luxury of many of those safety nets, and to get, other benefits such as like let's say food stamps, and I don't know much about that, but anything like that,
right?
You don't have your paperwork. How do you prove like unemployment? One of the issues with getting unemployment for a small business owner, that's what creates so much stress is for the owners, is that they're keeping told, okay, you're going to get unemployment. You're now approved for unemployment. Self-employed people get unemployment. Now we're 5 weeks into this, or however many weeks it is since the CARES Act passed. It might not be that long yet, but it seems like it. But only last Friday were you able even to apply. And then you have the states didn't get guidelines till right before that. They had to reprogram all their computers. Now you're dealing with the issue is, okay, how do we calculate the unemployment? I don't know enough about the CARES Act to say, well, is it that $600 a month because this is federal money,
right?
Or is it some calculation based on last year's, your tax return from last year? How do you know when they don't need the unemployment anymore? Or if it goes away, which I think most of these CARES Act items go away July 31st. What happens after that if we're not out of this? So there's so much, the anxiety level for small business owners is just, I wouldn't say it's unbearable, but when you're working with them, you got to understand what they're going through, because this is unprecedented in history since probably the Great Depression. But, the odds of being, and you mentioned this earlier, alluded to it, the odds of being, if most businesses go out of business within 3 years. So every startup, within 10 years, most of them are gone, or, they just don't exist anymore. So if someone's been in business for, 10, 15 years successfully, they've got everything invested in it. I mean, it's an extension of themselves. It's an extension of their own psyche. And to have that, it's their identity for most of them. And to have that threatened, I mean, I'm not in your profession, but you can just imagine the internal turmoil they're going through with, not being able to care for their families, not being able to provide, and not having the options that are available to other folks.
You mentioned that their identity is tied up into it. And I immediately thought again about some of the mental health professionals that I have talked about. And you and I had already said, we talked about redefining, restructuring, repurposing. You got to rediscover yourself, you got to start to have a fallback plan, I would think, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, realistically, you want to have that, when I work with small businesses, and it's hard to do. I mean, it really is, because, you want to have that 6 month savings saved up. You want to have that emergency fund that everybody talks about, but no one has hardly at all.
Right.
You want to have that. It's more important for a small business owner really than anybody else, because business cycles you have to survive. And one thing we learned from the housing crisis is that, the sky doesn't always, the sky's going to fall eventually, and you have to be prepared for it.
Right.
Nobody
plans to fail, and not to be corny or cliche, but don't fail to plan for some contingencies. Right. you sound really passionate about, and I'm bringing us into the next thing. I'm cheating to look at my script up here. You sound really knowledgeable about it. I'm going to use the word passionate. Sound really passionate about this. And I know that your wife was telling me, and maybe you mentioned it when you talked about the article, you had written something recently. So I wondered if you would speak on that, as that must be something that was a passion of you. Did you wrote a book, an article, both?
Well, I do a lot of writing. I mean, there's a lot of, that's really my passion is teaching and writing.
Okay.
But I did one recently, and the folks watching this might be very interested in it because a lot of them may work with the homeless.
Okay.
And this is kind of the sidebar here, but I wrote an article about it. It's on our website at overnightaccountant.com.
Okay.
And it basically talks about all the homeless qualify for this stimulus checks, these economic impact payments, $1,200 per individual. And it may be very beneficial for folks that are working with, homeless families or folks that are really struggling that have not filed tax returns for years. They can get this money.
Now,
and
Brett,
I have guidelines on how to collect. The article is really about, one of the articles anyways, is about how to help them do that.
so I just pulled up the website, Brett, because I think, again, for the reason I was thinking it'd be interesting to interview you, I do want to give these people some real practical stuff, not just, therapeutic talk. I pulled up overnight.com and I'm
Overnight
looking at
accountant.
the what? Oh, shoot. Okay.
Overnight accountant.
Sorry, hang on, buddy. Okay.
One word, overnight accountant.
Gotcha. Accountant.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sorry. There were, what was interesting, overnight.com come up with some overnight loans. All right, come on with you. I wanted to ask.
That's probably an expensive domain right there, too.
I'll bet. All right, so overnight accountant, double shot of knowledge, business, and tax. Where can these people find the article you were talking about?
Go right to the blog.
Wow.
Blog page.
I got you. So along the top edge for the viewers, there's a blog word that I tap on, and it says articles. Okay. And the first article there says helping the homeless receive economic impact payments. Is that you? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. So that's probably the most recent one then too, because it's on top.
Yes, sir, it is. Awesome. But yeah, no, I really want the viewers, because the viewers who are going to really be into this interview are going to be the ones who are entrepreneurs, small business, whatever. They're going to want some direct stuff, I think. This is that's you. There you are, pal. Brett Hirsch, published 4/20/2020. Awesome. So
that'd be it.
What else have you written? Multiple articles, I take it?
Oh, everything on there I've written. I mean, everything on Overnight Accountant. And
Okay.
what we're doing right now is, I mean, I don't know how exciting it is for your listeners, but we're mainly my primary business is realestatetaxpro.com. And we have classes on there for real estate agents and realtors, okay. Basically covering everything that's deductible in their tax return. So what I'm working on now is writing basically the manual for that, which will become a book also. So that's been a fairly long project, as you can imagine, but that's what we're doing right now.
Okay.
And then we want to do the one on the five pillars of business success, the 5 steps of business success, which will come later. That's kind of a next project. After we get done that.
Now we sort of already led into it with your sites here, which are interesting. Resources. I'd like to close up by letting you do some self-promotion, but above and beyond your business or businesses, maybe some government resources. You've talked about a lot already. Can you restate, if I'm a small businessman, I'm worried, I'm concerned, I'm struggling, pick the level, who can I start to reach out to?
I'm sorry, you just froze.
Okay. If I'm a small business owner, who can I start to reach out to in the government to actually get some help?
Oh, well, your unemployment state agency. I mean, the state unemployment office, probably because it's up and running now. Most states, not all of them.
Okay. Why not all of them?
Like I mentioned earlier, that you have to incorporate all this new stuff into your existing program, and the guidelines don't match the way we've done it. It's like starting a new entity within an existing entity. And
all right, so I can reach out to the unemployment office. Who else can I reach out to?
I'd reach out to your bank, and very soon. It might be too late now. I hate to say, but regarding the second round of PPP loans, payroll protection loans, which
Right.
they just released the guidelines last Friday for people that are self-employed that don't have employees.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at. um, you know, you got that. I reach out to your bank, like I mentioned earlier, talk to your landlord,
Okay.
batten down the hatches. Don't pay anything right now. I don't want to give that advice, but your family comes first.
Right.
The payroll protection loans, they can be forgiven, but only you got to talk to a professional about that, because it can only be forgiven if you lose the money for certain things like payroll. And I think I mentioned earlier that, okay, if you're using all the money for payroll, how do you pay yourself?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the way the government wrote the CARES Act is they basically funneled a bunch of unemployment through existing businesses so they wouldn't overwhelm unemployment.
Right.
That's kind of what they did, but they kind of let the business owners out of the loop.
Now, are you one of those professionals? Let's say I've reached out to my government agencies. I've done all those things you talked about. I've reached out. Some people have been helpful, compassionate. Some have not. And I'm still finding that I'm drowning. Are you the professional or one of the professionals I could reach out to? Can I, as an individual business owner, reach out to you, or do I have to go through a government agency to get assigned to you?
Well, I really don't work with any government.
Okay.
I guess the big catch-22 here is you can only do so much. If you don't, I hate to say, but a lot of small business owners are going to be, if they stay in business, they're going to be in startup mode again. So that's maybe where you can get some training on how to start up again. And once you're in business, once you get bit by the entrepreneurial bug, it's hard to go back and have a regular job.
Okay.
It just really is. So you may want to there's no such thing as failure in business. I mean, you got to fail to learn to win. You just got to take it and roll with it, and that's business. But again, this is unprecedented, and it's just, for lack of a better word, it's just sad. It's sad. So if you don't have the resources, I don't really coach in that respect. I'm more of a teacher. I'm not really a hands-on coach.
Okay.
There are resources out there through the Small Business Administration. They're kind of limited. You could go to SCORE, which something Society of Retired Executives, something SCORE, and there's one in Hagerstown. They help small business owners out. Hopefully, there's going to be more resources down the pipeline. I just keep an ear to the ground and just see what's coming up next. There's probably going to be another batch of help.
How does someone reach out to you, and when do I know you're the person I should be reaching out to as opposed to the unemployment office? Like, what brings most people to you? The people you represent, what is bringing them to you?
Well, primarily right now, I do a lot of tax work.
Okay.
So, and then overnight accountant, we do the trainings on different things, and that's more of a product-based thing. I don't do a lot of now we answer a lot of questions for students,
Okay.
but it's not really like classroom learning. Now we may have that later.
Okay.
But wearing all the hats I'm wearing is just because it's to a time, how much time do you have in a day?
Right.
And I'm, believe it or not, I'm trying to make a living also. So it's,
right. So besides overnightaccountant.com, how else could people reach out to you if they want to get your help?
Well, then go to real estate tax pro, realestate-taxpro.com. And we have contact forms there. We have also contact forms on Overnight Accountant.
Okay.
And mainly the most of the states, if it's not directly tax related or you're having a tax issue, most of the systems we're probably going to provide for business development is probably going to be through those classes we're going to be developing, and that hopefully will be before the summer's over.
Okay.
And they're really hands-on. I've worked with small businesses for, God, I used to say 20 years, but it's probably a lot more than 20 years now.
Right.
And we've just learned about these 5 principles or 5 steps we've learned from just studying the few businesses that succeed and seeing why so many of them fail. I mean, it's like.
I want to, before we close, I want to ask you, because you made a couple comments that caught my attention. I'm going to show my ignorance. But again, I'm thinking as a small business person, I can tell you, Brett, money makes me anxious. Okay. It just, I used to be a small businessman. I closed within the first year because I was not a good businessman. My heart was not into the business side of psychology. Okay. But for a small business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, are there things in place to, I'm going to steal a word, to shelter me So if I'm a complete mess, my business is just collapsed, and whatever the scenario, are there things that can be done through tax, whatever, shelters, some process that can help me stay alive well enough, long enough, that the worst case scenario is that I had to go back to the startup stage rather than completely out of business?
There's not really any resources outside of yourself. Now, this is where your profession may come in very handy, is someone getting some, I don't want to say psychological, but getting some emotional support if they don't have it, and a lot of times a small business is the whole family. There's no such thing as like someone in a family
Right.
that they're the only one in business, because it becomes your lifestyle.
Right.
So it's not just the owner, it's every member of that household. And they're all feeling the same stress. And a lot of times the spouse will be feeling it more than the individual doing it. I mean the individual that's actually in the business, just because of the level of uncertainty. And if you have one spouse that has a small business and the other one doesn't work, the one that's not employed,
Right.
it might be time for them. Obviously, it might be time for get a job, but well, we're going to get one right now. So it's
Right. I've got a neighbor around the block here. You made me think of him. As far as I know, he's the sole breadwinner, as our generation says. I don't know what his business is actually called, but he has a business where he shrink wraps vehicles and can do any sign, any motif, what have you. And I know he's done a lot of private stuff, but he's done a lot of industrial shrink wrap for businesses, vans, buses, that kind of thing. And I mean, I got to tell you, he's got the nicest toys in the neighborhood. He's got the Taj Mahal RV. Rumor has it, because his son and my son are the same age, he's got arcade-sized games in his basement. I mean, there's no shortcut. And they have a very modest house, but they have drag racing cars, both him and his son. So they've got some expensive hobbies. You know what I mean? He's done well for himself. But I have not seen him driving around a lot lately. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering how that's affecting them. I hadn't thought about that.
It may be. This is not a, I was actually economics during the housing, and I was like being a meteorologist in a hurricane. It was very interesting, but that was only one segment of the economy. Everything we went through in 2007, 2008, that was just one segment of the economy created by overly priced homes, basically, that were easy money that created the debt.
Right.
This is every single segment of the economy. You have hospitals shutting down. You have medical professionals that are in the same boat as everybody else. Industries that you would never think, small business owners that you would never think, employees you would never think that would be without work and under this level of anxiety. And you guys got your, God bless you guys. You guys got your work cut out for you. That's for sure.
Well, Brett, I appreciate you speaking to us. To our viewers, I know the microphones went in and out some, but I just want to reiterate, Brett Hirsch with overnightaccountant.com and Real Estate Tax Pros. Say that one again, because that's got some dashes in there or something.
Realestate-taxpro.com.
Okay. Reach out to him. If he's not your guy, I'm thinking he might know somebody, but I really appreciate it. There's some very down-to-earth, practical ideas. Hang on a second while I stop this recording. We'll say goodbye to everybody else, and then you and I'll wrap it up.